Welcome back to Bizarre Books, the channel where I narrate the books that no one else will. Some may find content from this channel disturbing, so viewer discretion is strongly advised. If you derive value from this channel and want to support my efforts, please consider donating via the links provided in the description below this video. If you do donate, you can request a specific book or chapter that you'd like to hear me narrate. The Assassination of Marilyn Monroe by Donald H. Wolfe. Chapter 2. Keep shooting, vultures. Quote, She lies on the couch, asleep, her head turned to one side, hair seeming to flow back upon the pillow. Her blouse is open at the throat, an artery pulses against the pale skin. Her breathing is regular, peaceful. She is a child, despite the long artificial eyelashes, the carefully done hair, the voluptuous body. The spirit of the child hangs over her like an innocent light. Her eyelids tremble, a dream perhaps. Her eyes are open, she asks, fully awake, "What day is it?" End quote. Norman Roston. Sunday morning, Guy Hockett, owner of the Westwood Village Mortuary, received a pre-dawn call to pick up Marilyn Monroe's body. Hockett drove his dented, nondescript mortuary van to the Monroe residence with his son, Don, a UCLA music student who was working his way through college by helping his dad pick up bodies on weekends. Arriving at 5th Helena Drive at approximately 5:45 a.m., they had difficulty getting through the crowd of reporters and curious neighbours gathering in front of the entry gates. Ironically, the large wooden gates had just been installed on Friday in compliance with Marilyn Monroe's wish for privacy. Clemens's call for backup on the radio had been picked up by a news junkie and flashed around the world on the wire services. News of the film star's death rolled through communication centres, jolting editors and reporters from their beds. Time and Life editor Richard Stolley placed an urgent call to Tommy Thompson, then a national news reporter attached to the Beverly Hills office. Thompson and Life photographer Lee Weiner were among the first press people to arrive at the Monroe residence. Awakened by a pre-dawn call, Joe Hyams, a New York Herald Tribune correspondent, telephoned photographer William Woodfield and roused him out of bed. Woodfield had recently photographed Marilyn Monroe's widely publicized nude swimming scene on the set of Something's Got to Give. Together, Hyams and Woodfield sped to the Monroe residence, where they found that the veteran Hollywood columnist James Bacon had beaten them to the scene. Claiming he was with the coroner's office, Bacon had gained entry and gone to the bedroom where the film star's nude body was being photographed by police photographers. Bacon claimed, "I stayed there long enough to get a good view of the body before the real coroner's staff arrived. Then I made a quick exit." Bacon described her body much as Clemens had. She was lying face down on the bed, face slightly turned to the left on a pillow. Her legs were straight. She wasn't holding a phone, as some have said. I noticed that her fingernails were dingy and unkempt. When Coroner Guy Hockett entered Marilyn Monroe's bedroom, he collected evidence of the possible cause of death. Presumably the pill bottles on the bedside table. He collected 8 of them. In one of the police photos, there appears to be a water glass on the floor next to the bed. Clemens stated that it hadn't been there earlier when the doctors helped him search the room for a drinking vessel. The police investigators set up temporary headquarters in the kitchen, where Sergeant Robert Byron and his supervisor Lieutenant Grover Armstrong, commander of the West Los Angeles Detective Division, began interviewing the witnesses. Byron stated that he arrived shortly after 5:30 a.m. and that Marilyn Monroe's attorney, Milton Mickey Rudin, was there along with Engelberg, Eunice Murray, publicist Patricia Newcomb, and handyman Norman Jeffries. Apparently Greenson had left sometime between Clemens's departure and Byron's arrival. In retrospect, Clemens believed that Rudin, Newcomb and Jeffries were on the premises when he arrived at approximately 4:40 a.m. A number of cars had been parked in the courtyard, and he hadn't entered all the rooms or the detached guest cottage. When Byron asked Murray about the discovery of the body, she basically repeated the story she had told Clemens, except she altered the time frame by 3.5 hours. Instead of saying that she had gotten up at midnight and seen the light under Marilyn's door, Murray stated that it was closer to 3:30 a.m. and that she called Greenson at 3:35. Apparently, Murray, Greenson and Engelberg had decided to change the chronology. Engelberg also advanced the time by 3.5 hours, telling Byron that he had pronounced the actress dead at 3:50 a.m., not shortly after 12:30 a.m., as he had stated to Clemens. In a follow-up report dated August 6, 1962, both Greenson and Engelberg reiterated the altered chronology. The time discrepancy wasn't an aberration or an error on the part of one of them. All three had changed their story. In his report, Byron described Murray as possibly evasive, and he recalled in a recent interview, "My feeling was that she had been told what to say. It had all been rehearsed beforehand. She had her story, and that was it." As for Engelberg and Greenson, Byron reflected, "There was a lot more they could have told us. I didn't feel they were telling the correct time or situation." On Sunday morning, Time and Life correspondent Tommy Thompson taped a lengthy interview with Eunice Murray, in which she recounted the events surrounding the film star's death in a sincere, soft-spoken voice, carefully measuring her words in a precise manner. In the following decades, evidence would contradict her story, and she would ultimately refute many of her statements preserved on the Thompson tapes. In her initial statements to the police and press, Murray recalled that she first became concerned about Marilyn when she got up to go to the bathroom and saw the light on under the door. She clearly stated, "It was the light under Marilyn's door that aroused my suspicion that something was terribly wrong." However, Murray's bedroom was adjacent to Monroe's and had its own bath, with its own entry from the Murray bedroom. On the way from Murray's bedroom to her bathroom, there is no view of Marilyn's bedroom door. Only if Murray had walked out into the hallway would she have had a view of a light under the door. In any case, the light under the door would prove to be an impossibility. See floor plan on page 577. After Marilyn Monroe's friend Robert Slatzer learned of her death, he went to the Monroe residence with the executrix Inez Melson on Thursday, August 9th. Footnote. In his book Marilyn Monroe, the biography, Donald Spoto accused Slatzer of being merely a fan who once met Marilyn during the filming of Niagara. However, evidence and statements made by numerous individuals who knew Slatzer and Marilyn during the decades of their friendship clearly established their enduring relationship. End of footnote. Slatzer noted that the recently installed carpeting was so thick that it was difficult to close Marilyn's bedroom door. The door scraped along the surface of the carpet, and it was impossible to see light beneath it. Murray, who was present during Slatzer's discovery, admitted that he was correct and that she must have been mistaken. The question remained, what actually led Murray to believe that something was terribly wrong in the middle of the night? In the book Marilyn, The Last Months, which Eunice Murray co-wrote in 1975 with her sister-in-law, astrologist Rose Shade, she again altered her story. Instead of saying that she got up to go to the bathroom, she attributes the discovery that something was terribly wrong to her Piscean qualities. The book states, quote, "A highly intuitive and gentle woman born under a Piscean sign, she, Murray, seemed to sense that nightmare awaited not in sleep, but beyond her bedroom door. She recalls that night vividly." There was no reason I knew of for waking, for turning on the light and opening the door to the hall. There was no evidence that anything was amiss until I saw the telephone cord at my feet. I knew then that something was terribly wrong. The cord ran from the spare bedroom, telephone room, across the hall, and under Marilyn's closed door. There was no sound from within her room, and the thick carpeting made it impossible to tell if her light was on or not. Cautious of waking her unnecessarily, I did not tap on the door or call her name. Very much alarmed, however, I dialed her psychiatrist on the other line." End quote. In the altered version, Murray tells her readers it was the sight of the telephone cord running under the door that compelled her to call Marilyn's psychiatrist at 3:30 a.m. However, the telephone cord running from the telephone room under the door into Marilyn's bedroom was not an uncommon sight after midnight. In fact, it was quite routine. 2 telephone lines ran to Marilyn's residence. Her house number, Granite 24830, was connected to a pink phone in the telephone room and an extension in the guest cottage. Her private number, Granite 61890, led to the white phone in the telephone room. The pink and the white phone each had a 30-foot extension cord, allowing Marilyn to take either one into her bedroom. Though Marilyn put the pink house phone under a pillow in the telephone room so its ring wouldn't disturb her, her friends knew that Marilyn kept the private white phone in her bedroom at night. To the annoyance of many, she was a notorious night caller. On sleepless nights, she often called people in the small hours of the morning to dispel her anxieties. Her friend Norman Roston recalled being awakened on numerous occasions in the pre-dawn hours and hearing the whispery voice on the phone saying, "Guess who this is?" When the phone rang at 2 a.m. and he fumbled in the dark for it, it didn't take clairvoyance to know that Marilyn was calling. On the night before she died, her friend Arthur James stated that Marilyn left a message at 3 a.m. with his answering service. Obviously, the telephone cord of the private line leading under the door into Marilyn's bedroom was the rule, not the exception. If neither of Murray's stories regarding her suspicion that something was terribly wrong had plausibility, the question remains: what did occur in the middle of the night that motivated her to call Dr. Greenson? Lieutenant Armstrong indicated in his report, Miss Murray was vague and possibly evasive in answering questions pertaining to the activities of Miss Monroe during this time. It is not known whether this is or is not intentional. In statements made to the press on Monday, Pat Newcomb stated that she had been awakened at her Beverly Hills apartment at approximately 4 a.m. on Sunday by a call from attorney Mickey Rudin. According to Newcomb, Rudin told her, "Marilyn has accidentally overdosed." "How is she?" Newcomb inquired. "She's dead," Rudin replied. Newcomb said that she then rushed from her Beverly Hills apartment to the Monroe residence, where she met her boss, publicist Arthur Jacobs. Although the police were officially notified of Marilyn's death by Engelberg at 4:25 a.m., it becomes evident from Newcomb's statement that both Rudin and Arthur Jacobs had been informed of her death prior to the police. The driving time from Newcomb's Beverly Hills apartment to Marilyn's on a Sunday morning is approximately 15 minutes. Yet during the time that Clemens was at the Monroe residence, from 4:40 a.m. until approximately 5:30 a.m., he didn't see Pat Newcomb or Arthur Jacobs. However, Byron stated that Newcomb was there when he arrived shortly after Clemens's departure. Although Newcomb claimed she spent early Sunday morning at Marilyn's dealing with the press and making numerous phone calls, Norman Jeffries described Newcomb as distraught and hysterical. Recalling that the police had difficulty dealing with her, Jeffries stated, "She was looking through drawers and going into Marilyn's bedroom. She had spent Friday night at the house and perhaps she was looking for something she had left there. The police had to control her. When they told us to leave because they were going to seal the house, she became unglued. They had trouble getting her out of the door. She kept trying to get back inside. I don't know if it was because she couldn't find what she was looking for, or if she just couldn't deal with everything that had happened. According to Murray, Pat Newcomb didn't want to leave. She was sitting in the third bedroom, the telephone room, where she had so recently spent the night. She had quieted down from her previous hysterical state, but gave no impression of planning to move. The police practically had to forcibly evict her. In the bedroom, when Guy Hockett and his son placed Marilyn's body on the gurney, he noted rigor mortis was advanced, and she was not lying quite straight, and it took about 5 minutes to straighten her out. We had to do quite a bit of bending to get the arms into position so that we could, put the straps around her. He added, she didn't look good, not like Marilyn Monroe. She looked just like a poor little girl that had died. When the time of death is unknown, it is often determined by the extent of rigor mortis. Over the first 4 to 14 hours after death, the muscles of the body contract to rock hardness. Hockett recalled that they placed the body on the gurney sometime between 5:30 and 6 a.m. He estimated that she had died approximately 6 to 8 hours earlier, or sometime between 9:30 and 11:30 Saturday night. As Marilyn Monroe's body was wheeled out of the house, the mortician's gurney passed over a tile embedded in the entryway with the Latin inscription Cursum Perficio, which literally translates, I have run the course. Reporter Joe Hyams stated, Mr. Hockett wheeled Marilyn's body out of the front door at about 6:30 a.m. They wheeled it down the courtyard near the gates where the mortuary van was parked. Her body had been wrapped from head to toe in a shroud made of a pale blue woolen blanket from the bed. They had placed the body, hands folded across the stomach, on the gurney and tied it down with leather straps at the feet and waist. Hyams and photographer William Woodfield noted that Captain James Hamilton of the LAPD Intelligence Division was there along with several intelligence officers. Knowing that Hamilton rarely appeared at a crime scene, let alone a suicide, Hyams realized that there was more to be learned regarding the death of Marilyn Monroe. Neighbors told Hyams of the strange sounds heard in the night. A woman screaming, and later a hysterical woman's voice yelling, "Murderers, you murderers! Are you satisfied now she's dead?" Others said they had heard a helicopter circling overhead shortly before midnight. Soon after Marilyn's body was placed in the mortuary van, Newcomb, Jeffries, and Murray were escorted by Sergeant Marvin Iannone from the kitchen entrance. Coroner's seals were then placed on the doors of the main house and the guest cottage. Though Newcomb said she had driven to the Monroe residence after Rudin's call, her car wasn't there. Photos and newsreel footage show that she was led from the house and got into the passenger seat of Murray's two-tone Dodge. As Jeffries opened the passenger door of Murray's car and Newcomb stepped inside, photographers scrambled for pictures and reporters bombarded her with questions concerning Marilyn's last hours. Once again becoming hysterical, Newcomb turned on the press and screamed, "Keep shooting, vultures!" As she was driven away from Marilyn Monroe's home for the last time, she yelled out the window, "How would you like it if one of your best friends died?" Not long after Murray's car pulled out of the gates, Guy and Don Hockett drove out of the courtyard in the mortuary van with the film star's body. Though Billy Woodfield wasn't ordinarily a press photographer, his instinct grasped the moment. Recently recalling the incident, Woodfield reflected, "Hyams had pressed me into service as a newsie, not my bag, but when the mortician's van drove off, I said to Joe, 'Come on, we've got to follow the money.'" Woodfield grabbed Hyam and they ran to their car and followed Hockett's van. Not knowing where the van was headed, they followed it to the Westwood Village mortuary, where Alan Abbott, the mortuary attendant, who helped in preparing bodies for embalming, was waiting. Leaving the body momentarily unattended, the Hocketts and Abbott entered the mortuary building. Woodfield took several photos of the shrouded body in the van. Then he and Hyams entered the mortuary to question Hockett. Walking to the office, Woodfield recalled passing the embalming room, where an array of specimen jars had been neatly arranged on a cart beside the embalming table. Name and case number tags were on each jar, and Monroe's name had been written on the embalmer's tags. Upon removing the body from the van, Alan Abbott became concerned when he discovered that the press had followed Hockett back to the mortuary. "I hid Miss Monroe's body in a broom closet," he recalled. "One of them had offered me $10,000 if they could take a picture of the corpse. I knew it wouldn't be long before they'd be descending on us like locusts, and I urged the Hocketts to call in some security. There was just 3 of us there, and it was a bit frightening. The lull before the storm. Pinkertons sent over 20 security guards to keep the press at a distance, and before the day was over we could have used more." Before leaving, Woodfield was able to get a photo of the shrouded body of one of the greatest motion picture stars of the 20th century lying in a broom closet, cluttered with mops, brushes, rags, and specimen bottles. End of chapter 2.